Zektar pressed his six-fingered hands against the cold metal walls of the transport ship, watching the blue marble of Earth shrink in the viewport. His scaled skin, once a proud emerald green, had dulled to a sickly gray-brown during his 3 years fighting alongside humans. The other Vorthan soldiers aboard the vessel gave him strange looks, whispering in their clicking language about how different he seemed now. Commander Vilnash approached, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the ship's harsh lights. "Warrior Zektar, you have served with honor. The High Council eagerly awaits your report on human military capabilities." The commander's voice carried the typical Vorthan pride, the same arrogance that had led their species to believe they were helping primitive humans defend their world from the devourers. Zektar's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of distress among his people. "Yes, Commander. I have much to report." His voice came out as a rasp, nothing like the confident warrior who had volunteered for the human front lines 3 years ago. The journey back to Vorthak Prime took 2 weeks. During this time, Zektar spent most hours alone in his quarters, staring at the datapad containing his official reports. The words felt hollow, unable to capture what he had truly witnessed. How could he explain to his people that everything they believed about humans was wrong? When he closed his eyes, he saw Sergeant Maria Santos diving into laser fire to pull a wounded Vorthan soldier to safety. He remembered Private Jackson sharing his last ration pack with alien refugees, even though humans needed twice as much food as Vorthans to maintain their energy. Most haunting of all was the memory of Captain Reynolds, bleeding out from a devourer claw wound, using his final breaths to coordinate an evacuation that saved 200 civilians from 7 different species. The Vorthan High Council had sent observers to human worlds expecting to document the assistance their superior technology provided to a struggling species. Instead, Zektar had watched humans achieve impossible victories through sheer determination and sacrifice. They fought with outdated weapons, ships held together by improvised repairs, and medical supplies that ran out weeks ago. Yet somehow, they kept winning. The transport ship finally docked at Vorthak Prime's orbital station. Zektar gathered his few belongings, including a small metal object he kept hidden in his personal kit. It was a human military decoration, given to him by Colonel Thompson after the Battle of Kepler Station. The human had pressed it into his hands, saying, "You're one of us now, Zek." No Vorthan had ever told him he belonged anywhere. The capital city of Vorthak Prime stretched before him as his shuttle descended. Crystalline spires reached toward the purple sky, each one a monument to Vorthan technological achievement. The buildings hummed with energy fields and anti-gravity platforms, displaying the advanced civilization his people had built over thousands of years. Yet after seeing what humans could accomplish with metal scraps and determination, the city felt cold and lifeless. His family was waiting at the landing platform. His birth mother, Silana, rushed forward, her scales bright with joy. "My son returns victorious. Tell us of your glorious battles against the primitive devourers." She stopped short when she saw his face, her excitement fading to concern. Zektar's siblings crowded around, all eager to hear tales of adventure. His younger brother, Kotran, bounced with excitement. "Did you really fight alongside the humans? Are they as violent and unpredictable as the data streams say?" "They are nothing like what we were told," Zektar replied quietly. His family exchanged glances, confused by his tone. The next morning, Zektar reported to the council chambers. The High Council of Vorthak consisted of 12 ancient beings, each one having lived for centuries and accumulated vast wisdom. They sat on floating platforms arranged in a circle, their ceremonial robes shifting with built-in holographic displays showing their achievements. High Counselor Yexthu spoke first, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "Warrior Zektar, you have observed human military operations for 3 standard years. Present your findings on their strategic capabilities." Zektar activated his datapad and began reading his prepared report. Human forces demonstrate adequate determination, but rely heavily on Vorthan technological support. Their equipment is primitive, their tactics straightforward, and their command structure inefficient by our standards. The words felt like poison in his mouth. Every statement was technically true, but missed the fundamental reality of what made humans extraordinary. Their primitive equipment was constantly modified in brilliant ways he had never seen before. Their straightforward tactics involved split-second adaptations that confused enemies expecting predictable alien behavior. Their inefficient command structure allowed individual initiative that could turn defeat into victory. High Counselor Zarvek leaned forward. What of their psychological state? Do they show proper gratitude for our assistance? This question made Zektar's stomach churn. He remembered Lieutenant Davis apologizing for not having better quarters when Zektar was assigned to his unit. The human had given up his own private room and slept in the common area for 6 months, claiming it was no big deal. He thought of Dr. Emily Chen, who had worked 18-hour shifts treating wounded Vorthan soldiers with the same care she gave to humans, never once mentioning that Vorthan medicine was centuries ahead of human medical technology. They are appropriately appreciative, he lied. The questioning continued for hours. Each answer felt like a betrayal of the humans who had welcomed him as family. Finally, High Counselor Yexthu dismissed him with instructions to prepare a detailed presentation for the full assembly next week. Zektar returned to his family home. But sleep would not come. He stood on the observation deck, looking up at the stars where human worlds orbited distant suns. The nightmares that had plagued him since leaving Earth grew stronger each night. Not dreams of battle or death, but visions of telling the truth to the High Council. He imagined standing before the assembly and revealing what humans were really like. In his dreams, he told them about the human child who had offered to share her toy with him during a refugee evacuation, even though she was terrified of his alien appearance. He spoke of Corporal Williams, who had learned basic Vorthan language just to better communicate with alien civilians they were protecting. He described watching humans push their bodies far beyond what should have been physically possible, powered by nothing but stubborn refusal to let others suffer. But in these dreams, the Council's reaction was always the same. They would declare humans a potential threat, a species too unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology. The military aid would stop. Worse, they might decide that humans needed more direct supervision for the good of the galaxy. Zektar touched the hidden human decoration in his pocket. The metal was warm from his body heat, and he could feel the engraved words, "For valor." Colonel Thompson had explained that valor meant courage in the face of danger, especially moral courage. The colonel had looked directly at Zektar when he said that last part. A soft chime indicated someone was approaching his quarters. His sister Nilara entered, carrying a cup of heated nutrition fluid. "You seem troubled, brother. The family is concerned about your behavior since returning." Zektar accepted the cup, but did not drink. "The war changed me, sister. I have seen things that challenge our understanding." "What kind of things?" Nilara settled beside him, her scales shifting to calming blue patterns. As a counselor for returning warriors, she was trained to help soldiers readjust to civilian life. What if everything we believe about other species is wrong? What if we are not the wise guardians we think we are? The questions tumbled out before he could stop them. Nilara's scales shifted to concerned yellow. "These thoughts are dangerous, brother. The Council's wisdom has guided our people for millennia. We have lifted countless species from barbarism and chaos. Have we? Or have we simply imposed our will because we could?" Zektar stared into his cup, seeing his reflection distorted in the surface. What if some species do not need our guidance? What if they have wisdom we cannot understand? His sister reached out to touch his arm, her scales now deep purple with worry. "You should speak with the temple healers. These doubts are clearly a result of trauma from your experiences. The human's primitive emotions must have affected your mental balance." Zektar almost laughed at the irony. Human emotions were not primitive at all. They were raw and powerful, and drove humans to accomplish miracles that Vorthan logic said were impossible. Human love made parents fight like demons to protect children who were not even their own species. Human compassion led medics to risk their lives treating enemies. Human hope kept soldiers fighting when every rational analysis said they should surrender. But he could not explain this to his sister. In Vorthan society, emotions were considered base impulses to be controlled by superior intellect. The idea that emotions could be a source of strength rather than weakness was incomprehensible to his people. "Perhaps you are right," he said finally. "I will consider speaking with the healers." Nilara brightened, her scales returning to normal green. "Excellent. Now try to rest, brother. Tomorrow, you can begin the process of putting these disturbing experiences behind you." After she left, Zektar stood alone with his thoughts and the weight of the human decoration in his pocket. In 5 days, he would stand before the Vorthan assembly and deliver his report. The future relationship between their species might depend on his words. He could give them what they expected to hear, confirming their beliefs about human inferiority and Vorthan superiority. The military aid would continue. Human worlds would remain under subtle Vorthan influence, and his people would never understand what they were truly dealing with. Or he could tell the truth and risk everything. The stars offered no answers, only the cold light of distant suns where humans might be fighting for their lives at this very moment, unaware that their fate was being decided in a crystalline chamber millions of miles away. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Zektar was reviewing his presentation files when the door chimed. Outside stood veteran Commander Thaxmol, a legendary figure who had fought in the Sector Wars 30 years ago. His scales bore the distinctive silver markings of the highest military honors, and his presence commanded immediate respect. "Warrior Zektar, I request permission to enter." The old commander's voice carried authority that had once directed entire fleets. Confused but respectful, Zektar stepped aside. "Of course, Commander. How may I serve you?" Thaxmol entered and waited for the door to seal before speaking. "I have read your preliminary reports. They concern me greatly." His ancient eyes, clouded with age but still sharp, fixed on Zektar. Zektar's blood turned cold. Discovery meant disgrace, exile, possibly even execution for treason. "Commander, I do not understand what you mean. I have lived for 300 years, young warrior. I have seen many soldiers return from difficult campaigns. Your reports read like someone describing a training exercise, not 3 years of actual combat." Thaxmol moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "More importantly, I have sources among our intelligence networks. I know what really happened at the Battle of Kepler Station." The name hit Zektar like a physical blow. Kepler Station was where everything had changed for him, where he had watched humans perform what the Vorthan Military Academy would have classified as impossible. "Tell me what you think you know," Zektar said carefully. Thaxmol's scales shifted to a deep blue, indicating complete seriousness. "Our long-range sensors recorded the battle. A human force of 200 soldiers, equipped with weapons at least 50 years behind our current technology, held off 3,000 Devourer warriors for 6 hours. Not only did they hold their position, they launched a counterattack that completely routed an enemy force 15 times their size." Zektar remained silent, remembering that day with perfect clarity. According to physics and military doctrine, this should have been impossible. Yet it happened. Our analysts have been struggling to explain it for months. The official report claims successful deployment of new Vorthan tactical systems, but our weapons logs show minimal Vorthan fire during the engagement. The old commander paused, studying Zektar's reaction. "You were there. You saw what really happened. And you are protecting the humans by hiding it from us." Zektar felt his carefully constructed defenses crumbling. "Why does this matter to you, Commander? The war is being won. Human worlds are safe. What difference does it make how the victories are achieved?" "Because," Thaxmol said, settling into a chair, "I have been having the same nightmares you have been having." This revelation stunned Zektar. "What do you mean?" 40 years ago, I was part of a peacekeeping mission to the Kelleran system. The Kellerans were a primitive species, barely achieving spaceflight, constantly at war among themselves. We arrived to bring order and civilization to their chaotic worlds. The old warrior's voice grew distant, We succeeded, of course. The fighting stopped. Their governments accepted our guidance. Peace was established. Zektar waited, sensing there was more to the story. But in the process, we destroyed something unique. The Kellerans had a way of thinking that was completely alien to us. They saw connections between things that our logic could not comprehend. Their art, their music, their poetry, expressed concepts that we could not even translate properly into our language. Thaxmol stood and walked to the window, looking out at the perfect order of Vorthan civilization. We convinced ourselves that we were helping them evolve beyond their primitive state. Within 20 years, their culture had been completely absorbed into our empire. They think like us now, act like us, create art that follows our aesthetic principles. Is that not a good thing? Zektar asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Perhaps, but sometimes I wonder what we lost. What insights, what innovations, what forms of beauty might have emerged from their unique perspective if we had let them develop naturally. The commander turned back to face Zektar. I have studied the preliminary reports from other human fronts. Everywhere our forces are engaged alongside humans, the same impossible victories are occurring. And everywhere, the official reports credit Vorthan technology and tactics. Zektar realized where this conversation was leading. You think we are making the same mistake with humans that you made with the Kellerans. I think we are making a much worse mistake. The Kellerans were divided and primitive. When we found them, humans are united in ways we do not understand, and their primitive technology seems to accomplish things our advanced systems cannot. Toxmol's scales shifted to worried yellow. What if they are not primitive at all? What if they simply approach problems from directions we have never considered? The question hung in the air between them. Zektar thought of Corporal Martinez, who had jury-rigged a communication system from damaged Vorthan equipment and human electronics. The hybrid device had worked better than either system alone, establishing contact with isolated units across an entire planet. When Zektar had asked how he knew it would work, Martinez had just shrugged and said, "Sometimes, you gotta trust your gut." Trusting your gut was not something taught in Vorthan military academies. Every decision was supposed to be based on careful analysis, probability calculations, and established doctrine. Yet somehow, human gut instincts led to tactical innovations that surprised even their enemies. Commander, what are you asking me to do? Thaxmol moved closer, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. I am asking you to tell the truth in your presentation. All of it. Let the assembly see what humans are really capable of. Teng. 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 That would destroy everything. The Council believes we are guiding and protecting a primitive species. If they learn that humans are achieving victories through means we do not understand, they will see it as a threat to our technological superiority. Perhaps they should. The old commander's words carried the weight of decades of experience. Perhaps it is time for our people to learn that there are other forms of wisdom in the universe. Zektar felt the human decoration growing warm in his pocket. And if the assembly decides that humans are too dangerous to be allowed independence? If they order direct occupation of human worlds? Then we will discover whether human resistance is as formidable as their military capabilities. Thaxmol's expression was grim. Ask. Monogam. 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 But I believe the greater danger lies in continuing to underestimate them. What happens when they realize we have been taking credit for their victories? What happens when they discover that our aid comes with the assumption of their inferiority? The question struck home. Zektar had wondered the same things during his final days on Earth. Several human officers had begun asking pointed questions about Vorthan intelligence reports. Colonel Thompson had mentioned discrepancies between Vorthan strategic assessments and actual battlefield results. Captain Rodriguez had openly questioned why Vorthan tactical advisors seemed surprised by human battlefield innovations. There is something else you should know, Thaxmol continued. I have been in contact with other veterans who served alongside humans. Your experience is not unique. We have all returned with the same doubts, the same sense that our understanding of this species is fundamentally flawed. How many others? 17 that I have located so far. All decorated veterans, all struggling with the disconnect between what they witnessed and what they are expected to report. The commander's scales shifted to determined green. We have been meeting privately, comparing our experiences. The picture that emerges is unsettling. Zektar leaned forward. What kind of picture? Humans consistently perform beyond the parameters of our predictive models. Their casualty rates are lower than projected. Their equipment performance exceeds manufacturer specifications. Their tactical adaptability surpasses that of species with centuries more military experience. Thaxmol paused. Most disturbing of all, they seem to improve at a rate that suggests they are learning from our technology and tactics faster than we are learning from theirs. The implications were staggering. If humans were not the junior partners in this alliance that everyone believed them to be, then the entire foundation of Vorthan policy toward Earth was based on false assumptions. What do you want from me, Commander? Courage. The same courage you learned from the humans you fought beside. Thaxmol stood to leave. Your presentation could change everything. It could force our people to see humans as equals rather than primitives. Or it could start a conflict that neither species is prepared for. And if I choose to maintain the deception, then nothing changes. The humans continue fighting and dying, while we take credit for their achievements. Eventually, they will figure out what is happening. When that day comes, we will discover whether human anger is as formidable as human determination. After the commander left, Zektar sat alone with his thoughts. He pulled out the human decoration and studied its simple design. The metal was scratched and worn, but the words remained clear. For valor. Colonel Thompson had explained that valor meant doing the right thing even when it was dangerous, especially when it was dangerous. Outside his window, the perfect city of Vorthak Prime continued its orderly existence. Thousands of years of civilization had created a society of unmatched technological achievement and cultural refinement. But as Zektar looked at those crystalline spires, he wondered if perfection might also mean stagnation. He thought of the human military base where he had spent his last months on Earth. The buildings were functional rather than beautiful. The equipment was constantly being modified and improved, and the people were loud, emotional, and unpredictable. Yet there had been an energy there, a sense of possibility and growth that he had never experienced on Vorthak Prime. For the first time since returning home, Zektar began to seriously consider telling the truth. The consequences would be enormous, possibly catastrophic. But the alternative was living with the knowledge that he had betrayed the humans who had trusted him with their lives. The decoration grew warm in his palm as he made his decision. The assembly hall was the largest structure on Vorthak Prime, capable of holding 10,000 beings. Today, it was filled to capacity. News of a major presentation about the human war had spread throughout the capital, drawing citizens, military leaders, scientists, and philosophers. The curved walls displayed holographic star charts showing the current state of the conflict, with Vorthan-protected human worlds marked in blue and contested territories in red. Zektar stood in the preparation chamber, reviewing his presentation one final time. In his hands were 2 data crystals. The first contained his original report, carefully worded to maintain Vorthan assumptions about human capabilities. The second contained the truth, compiled over sleepless nights with input from Thaxmol and the other veterans. The decision of which crystal to use would determine the future of 2 species. High Counselor Yexthu appeared on the communication screen. Warrior Zektar, the Assembly is ready to receive your report. Proceed to the speaking platform. Zektar made his way through corridors filled with excited citizens. Many recognized his military insignia and bowed respectfully, honoring his service on the human front lines. Their faith in Vorthan superiority was absolute, built on millennia of successful expansion and civilizing missions. He was about to challenge everything they believed about their place in the universe. The speaking platform rose from the center of the assembly floor, surrounded by thousands of faces turned expectantly toward him. Above, the High Council sat in their ceremonial circle, their platforms hovering 20 meters above the crowd. Advanced holographic projectors would broadcast his presentation throughout the Vorthan Empire, reaching billions of citizens across hundreds of worlds. High Counselor Yexthu's voice echoed through the chamber. Citizens of Vorthok, we gather to hear the report of warrior Zektar, who has observed human military operations for 3 standard years. His findings will guide our future policy toward this developing species. The crowd settled into respectful silence. Zektar felt the weight of the human decoration in his pocket, a small piece of alien metal that had somehow become the most important object in his life. Honored Council, citizens of Vorthak, I stand before you having witnessed events that challenge our fundamental understanding of warfare, courage, and what it means to be civilized. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics, reaching every listener. He activated the holographic display, showing a star map of human space. For 3 years, I served alongside human forces fighting against the Devourer invasion. I was sent to observe and document how our technological assistance enabled human victory against a superior enemy. Murmurs of approval rippled through the audience. This was the narrative they expected. The confirmation of Vorthan benevolence and wisdom. What I discovered was not what any of us expected. Zektar's next words would cross the point of no return. The humans are not the primitive species we believed them to be. They are not dependent on our technology for survival. They are not grateful recipients of our superior wisdom. The murmurs changed tone, becoming confused and concerned. Several council members leaned forward, their scales shifting to alert colors. They are something far more remarkable and far more dangerous than we ever imagined. Zektar changed the display to show footage from the Battle of Kepler Station, recorded by his own equipment during the engagement. This is footage from a battle that our official reports credit to successful deployment of Vorthan tactical systems. 200 human soldiers, equipped with weapons our engineers would classify as obsolete, facing 3,000 Devourer warriors, backed by assault cruisers and orbital support. The hologram showed the initial Devourer assault, a wave of chittering monsters that should have overwhelmed any defensive position within minutes. Then, the human response began. Watch carefully. You will notice that Vorthan weapons fire accounts for less than 5% of the defensive barrage. The humans are using their own equipment, modified in ways that violate basic engineering principles, yet somehow achieve superior performance. The footage showed Sergeant Santos jury-rigging an anti-aircraft cannon from spare parts, creating a weapon that fired faster and hit harder than the original design. Lieutenant Park coordinating artillery strikes, using calculations performed in his head, achieving accuracy that required computer assistance, according to Vorthan doctrine. But technology is only part of the story. Observe their tactical coordination. The hologram shifted to show the human counterattack. Instead of the predictable maneuvers taught in military academies across the galaxy, the humans moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but achieved perfect synchronization. Small units operated with complete independence while maintaining seamless coordination with the overall battle plan. This is not primitive tactics. This is a form of tactical thinking that we do not understand and cannot replicate. Every human soldier, from private to colonel, demonstrates initiative and adaptability that exceeds our most experienced veterans. A voice from the council cut through the growing murmur of the crowd. Warrior Zektar, are you suggesting that human military doctrine is superior to our own? Zektar met the councilor's gaze directly. I am suggesting that human military thinking is so fundamentally different from ours that comparison is meaningless. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us, and they achieve results that our strategic models say should be impossible. He changed the display again, showing casualty reports from human engagements across multiple theaters. Human forces consistently suffer lower casualties than projected while inflicting higher damage on enemy forces than their equipment ratings should allow. This pattern holds across every engagement, against every enemy type, in every tactical situation. The silence in the chamber was becoming oppressive. Citizens exchanged worried glances, while council members engaged in rapid private communications. There is more. Zektar's voice grew stronger, fueled by memories of human sacrifice and courage. I have witnessed humans risk their lives to save Vorthan soldiers they had known for minutes. I have seen human medics treat alien wounded with the same care they give their own species. I have watched human engineers share their innovations freely with any ally who could benefit from them. He pulled the decoration from his pocket, holding it up for the cameras to focus on. This was given to me by a human colonel after I helped evacuate wounded civilians during the Kepler Station battle. The inscription reads, "For valor." But the real gift was not the medal. It was being treated as an equal by beings we consider our inferiors. The crowd was beginning to react more vocally now. Some citizens were calling out questions, others demanding clarification. The council members were no longer attempting to hide their private discussions. High Counselor Zarvek's platform descended slightly, bringing him closer to the speaking level. Warrior Zektar, you appear to be suggesting that our entire assessment of human capabilities is incorrect. This would have serious implications for our policies throughout this sector. Our assessment is not just incorrect, honored counselor. It is dangerously naive. Zektar activated his final presentation slide, showing a projection of human technological development over the past 50 years. Humans are advancing at a rate that suggests they will achieve technological parity with us within 2 generations. Their innovations in materials science, energy systems, and information processing are following completely different development paths from our own. They are not trying to copy our technology. They are creating alternatives that may ultimately prove superior. The implications hit the audience like a physical shock. For centuries, Vorthans had measured their success by how quickly they could elevate primitive species to acceptable levels of civilization. The idea that a species might develop along different lines and achieve equivalent or superior results challenged the foundation of their entire culture. Most importantly, Zektar continued, humans are beginning to question why Vorthan's strategic assessments consistently underestimate their capabilities. They are starting to wonder why our intelligence reports seem surprised by their tactical innovations. How long do we think it will take them to realize that we have been taking credit for their victories? High Counselor Yexthu's platform descended to the speaking level. Warrior Zektar, you are making very serious accusations. Are you claiming that the High Council has deliberately deceived the Assembly about human capabilities? I am claiming that we have deceived ourselves. We sent observers to human worlds, expecting to document our successful guidance of a primitive species. Instead, we discovered a form of intelligence that operates by principles we do not understand. Rather than admit our ignorance, we have chosen to maintain our illusions. The chamber erupted in chaos. Citizens shouted questions and accusations while council members attempted to restore order. Through the noise, Zektar heard the sound he had been dreading, the activation of the security protocols that would end his presentation. But before the guards could reach him, another voice cut through the tumult. Commander Thaxmal had entered the speaking area, his ancient authority demanding attention, even in the midst of confusion. Citizens of Vorthak, I call for order, under the right of veteran testimony. The old warrior's voice carried over the crowd, also Chana, Ender Vorthak, invoking an ancient law that granted decorated veterans the right to speak on matters of military importance. The security guards hesitated. The right of veteran testimony had not been invoked in living memory, but it carried the force of constitutional law. Thaxmal stepped beside Zektar on the speaking platform. Everything this warrior has told you is true. I have spent months investigating his claims, interviewing other veterans, reviewing classified intelligence reports. The evidence is overwhelming. The chamber gradually quieted as citizens and council members alike realized they were witnessing a historic moment. The question before us is not whether humans are what we thought they were. The question is what we do now that we know what they really are. Thaxmal's words carried the weight of 3 centuries of military experience. High Counselor Yexthu's platform rose back to council level. After several minutes of private discussion among the council members, he addressed the assembly again. This session is recessed pending emergency deliberations. All citizens will remain in the chamber while the council evaluates these revelations. As the council platforms withdrew to their private chamber, Zektar remained standing on the speaking platform. He had done it. He had told the truth. Whether that truth would lead to a new understanding between species, or to a conflict that neither side was prepared for, only time would tell. In his hand, the human decoration caught the light from the chamber's illumination systems. For the first time since leaving Earth, Zektar felt like he deserved to carry it. He had finally found his valor. The crowd around him buzzed with conversation as citizens struggled to process what they had heard. Some seemed angry, others confused. Many appeared frightened. The comfortable certainty of Vorthan's superiority had been shattered in the span of an hour. But in the midst of the chaos, Zektar noticed something interesting. Small groups of citizens were engaged in animated discussions about the tactical footage they had witnessed. Some were asking detailed questions about human engineering innovations. Others were speculating about the implications of alternative development paths for technological progress. For the first time in his life, he was seeing Vorthan citizens genuinely curious about another species, rather than simply assuming their own superiority. Perhaps there was hope after all. The chamber doors opened, and 17 Vorthan veterans entered in formation. They were the others that Taxmol had mentioned, all decorated soldiers who had served alongside humans and struggled with the same revelations that had tormented Zektar. They took positions around the speaking platform, their presence a silent statement of support for the truth that had been revealed. Whatever the council decided, the veterans who had witnessed human capabilities firsthand would stand together. High above, behind closed doors, the fate of 2 species was being decided. But on the assembly floor, something unprecedented was happening. For the first time in their recorded history, the Vorthan people were being forced to question whether they truly were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. The answer to that question would determine whether the future held partnership or conflict, understanding or war, growth or stagnation for both species. All Zektar could do now was wait and hope that the courage he had learned from humans would prove contagious among his own people.